I've read pretty much every Christian dating book, and I wish I were kidding. There would be some good time that I could recoup if I could just end up not reading some of those books, because some of them weren't very good at all. In these different Christian dating books, they would often talk about protecting a woman's heart, And I think this is really important, but especially as I began to enter the dating scene in my early 20s, the Christian dating scene, that is, like, I really didn't have a concept of what it meant to protect her heart. Like, a lot of people would say, protect her heart, you don't want to mess with her heart, like, protect her heart. But I'm like, what does that even mean? For me, I was ignorant. I just didn't understand it. Now I have a lot better understanding, and hopefully this will help you in your relationship and perhaps prevent some heartache that would be just unnecessary. So the first thing for me is pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised how many guys just kind of skip over this part. They don't really acknowledge this, and it's the communication piece. Like, I mean, men are notorious for being bad communicators, but the reality is communication is where you can verbalize your expectations, verbalize how you see this relationship. Like, if you don't want to play with a woman's heart, right? If you want to respect her, if you want to care for her, if you actually do want to do what's best for her, you want to verbalize right up front what your expectations are, okay? If you're just trying to sort it out, and you're just still figuring it out, and you're not sure what's going on exactly and how you feel, it's like, tell her that. Say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about this relationship. I'm still trying to, like, figure it out. Tell her that, okay? If you are, like, game set and you're like, hey, I want to marry you one day. If you say that, that's your word, right? If the hurt comes in is when you go back on your word and when you don't communicate. Another piece is that, hey, if somebody's interested in you and, you kind of, like, basically treat her like your girlfriend, and you're going on dates with her, you're going one-on-one with her, you're inviting her over to your place, you're just hanging out. She might be thinking, hey, you know what? This he really likes me. We're going somewhere, we're doing something. And then all of a sudden you're like, one day you're like, wait a minute, I don't like you at all. No, we're just friends, right? And yet you've been treating her like your girlfriend, right? You've been doing these things. So it's like, communicate with her. Hey, you know what? I don't see you that way. I just want you to know that we're just friends, right? We're just friends, and I don't really see this going anywhere in the future. And part of that comes into your behavior. Stop going out one-on-one with her, right? Like, stop treating her like your girlfriend, because she's not, and you don't want her to feel like she is, because you don't have those intentions. So verbalize those expectations. I think the problem is, as guys, we want to be passive. That's our sin. That was Adam's sin in the garden. He was passive to what Eve was doing, to the conversation that she was having with the serpent and her eating the fruit, and he was just standing back, right? And it's that passivity that really infiltrates our own lives and our own relationships. So what do we need to do to get away from that? It's to take responsibility, especially in a relationship, to guide the ship, to not just, like, let her lead, and, no, verbalize your expectations, say where you're taking her in this relationship, and continue to verbalize your thoughts and your expectations towards a relationship. Okay, the second thing is underrated. I've never heard somebody say this before, actually, so maybe this is just total garbage, what I'm about to tell you, but maybe it's actually good. So you tell me. Provide the appropriate level of security. Provide the appropriate level of security. Let's say you're dating a girl, right? You have a girlfriend, and you are like, okay, you're like, I love you. I'm going to marry you, and nothing will ever separate us, and, we will be together forever. And meanwhile, it's like, a week into your dating relationship. I mean, I basically told my wife something similar 3 weeks into the relationship, but the difference is that happened. We got married, right? That was my pursuit. I said that, but I followed through. Okay, so here's my deal, is that if you're going to say something like that, you have to follow through. You have to follow through. And a lot of guys are like, well, but I don't know, right? So don't say something like that. It's not a requirement that you tell her that you're going to marry her 2 weeks in. That's not a requirement, right? It's not a requirement. You can give her the appropriate level of security, right? Saying, I really like you. And then maybe one day you say, oh, I love you, right? And that's how you kind of operate. But you're not making these promises. You're not doing all these things until you're prepared to keep them. Like, that's the reality, guys. Don't make promises you can't keep. And if there's any question that you're not going to be able to keep that promise, don't say it. The third thing to remember is that you are not the one yet. You are not the one yet, so don't act like it. You are not her husband. You're not the decision maker. You're not her spiritual leader. Sure, you can begin to kind of step in some of those roles, because even in a relationship, like a dating relationship, yeah, you want to guide, you want to lead as the man. but you're not her spiritual head, right? Her father is still her spiritual head. You're not her husband yet. And yeah, you can give your input on certain decisions, but recognize, hey, you're not the decision maker yet. You're not the authority over her yet. That's not what's going on here. So just recognize that. And because when you begin to step too far into those roles, right, you confuse her too, because then she starts to shift like, okay, I guess he is my leader. I guess he is the one guiding me. I guess he's the one making the decisions, right? Preemptively, because you're not the husband. There's not that covenant there. There's not that security there. So one day you're like, you know what, actually this relationship really isn't working out. And all of a sudden it feels to her like you got a divorce, right? That's the reality, because that's how integrated your lives were, and that's how much she relied on you. The fourth thing that I think is helpful to remember as you're trying to protect her heart is thinking about, if she is not the one for me, how should I treat her? How should I treat her, right? And if you're crossing boundaries, and I recognize, guys, there's temptation. There's definitely temptation, right? To cross physical boundaries, emotional boundaries. You want to get close. You like this person. You maybe even love this person, right? You want to cross these boundaries. But I would just really ask you, consider if they're not the one. Consider if they're not the one. How would you like to treat her? How would you ideally want to treat her? Song of Solomon in chapter 8, it says something that says, don't awaken desire before it's time. Don't awaken desire before it's time. The fifth thing in protecting her heart truly is something underrated, but I think it's important. It was helpful advice that I got when I was dating my wife, and it's that you need to be careful about dreaming together. You need to be careful about dreaming together, especially early on. I'd say this because it's really easy early on to start talking about your house and maybe your wedding and what your kids are going to be like, or, where you're going to go to, where they're going to go to school, or what city you're going to live in, and what your future is going to be like, and the vacations that you're going to go on to, and what you're, all these different things. And, there's definitely place for that later on in the relationship. It's just kind of a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Be intentional about getting to know the person's past and present, and where their values are. Yeah, what their desires are. But you're not talking about it like, oh, we're going to live in this big house and there's going to be these vines coming off it and it's going to be this beautiful. I just have found that it's pretty unhelpful to begin those kind of dreaming phases with someone that you're not super committed to yet. Know that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. There's forgiveness. Jesus forgives you, right? Like, you don't need to have this looming pressure on your heart that you're going to do something wrong or whatever. Just the mentality of wanting to protect your heart is huge. And watching this video, you have some tips, so go for it. You got this. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe because I'm putting out new videos all the time. And until next time, keep pursuing the mission.